Hello everybody and welcome to a video about budget decks, and I don't mean budget decks, I mean ultra budget decks. All of these decks are 1060 dust or lower. So the most expensive deck to craft in this video is going to be 1060 dust, and they are gonna go all the way down to, I think it's 600 dust, the cheapest one. Now I need to put some disclaimers before I start this video. First disclaimer, this is for absolute beginners. If you are a more advanced player, if you've played Hearthstone for even a little while, these might not be suited for you because you have already progressed further, right? This is for the absolute beginners, the people that just started playing like 2-3 days ago. So if you have been playing for a while, this is probably not for you. Second disclaimer, these are not super suited for constructive play, of course, because if you're gonna play constructed, you need a deck that is 100% interlinked so that you can, your entire deck flows, right? And that's very hard to do with such a limited dust amount. However, I have done my best. I do not think you have it to compete in constructed with these decks, because if you want to compete in constructed, you need full packages, and those are often way more expensive than just 1000 dust. That is all the disclaimers. With that being said, we are going to go into the classes. Alright guys, the first deck we're gonna have a look at is Demon Hunter, but before I tell you about that, I'm just gonna tell you every single deck you see in this video will be in the description below, and they will be on the Hearthstone site, meaning you need to import them from there onto Hearthstone. And if you have just started Hearthstone, you might find that pretty hard, so I will put a video down below on how to import any deck, and also what you need to think about after importing a deck which has cards that you don't already own. Now this video in the description is the top link, and it will be around 1 minute long, so just watch that and you will know how to import the decks. It's very simple. So this will run you 1060 dust, making this one of the most expensive decks I'm gonna show you today. This is actually a pretty confident deck. This is quite competent. I think you could actually, in constructed, maybe have a shot at getting to bronze 5 with this deck. This deck actually could kind of work. You have beautiful cards like Battle Fiend, which gains attack as you attack, and as a Demon Hunter you attack a lot. This entire deck is very aggro. Then you have Blazing Battle Mage, 1 mana 2/2. You have the Twin Slice, the Crimson Sigil Runner to not run out of fuel. We have the Ursul Horror for extra 2/1 capabilities. We have the Swamp Ooze because we need to put some basic cards, of course, in order to keep the price down. And you might run versus someone with a big weapon that is gonna do big damage to you. Then you can just use your Swamp Ooze and remove their weapon. We have Sightless Watcher, which is of course a basic card, but it's a really good card. We have Spectral Sight, which will allow you to draw 4 cards in total over the 2 copies you have. We have the Umberwing, which is a great card. And then Coordinated Striker, Subtle Overseer. This is one of the rare cards, right? So this is Illidari Fellblade, which is a minion which is very useful, because if you use this as an outcast, it gains rush and immune, meaning you can kill something with 5 health easily, without even taking damage to Illidari, which is really good. We have Skull of Gul'dan for extra drawing capability. We have Priestess of Fury for that pure damage and board control. And we have Hulking Overfiend as our top for the board control that it does. Like, it does board control, and then after you have board, you also have a lot of damage to face, hopefully. So this whole package will work pretty well, I think. It's pretty aggressive, but even if you don't kill your opponent by, by turn 8, you still have this overhanging stuff here, which will help you a lot. I would definitely recommend playing this deck if you want to play a Demon Hunter archetype. I could recommend every single deck that I'm gonna show you today, because all of them are like the beginner decks that I've come up for their class, but there are some that I especially will request that you use. Like, there are some really competitive decks right in this list, but this is not one of those. But yeah, let's move on to the next class. Alright, so next up we have Priest, and making an ultra budget Priest is very, very hard. So what we have done is we've gone into the Discover elements as much as we can. This is another deck that costs 1060 dust. So what we want to do with this deck is try to discover as many OP cards as we can. We try to take over our opponent's card, we try to steal cards from our opponent's hand. And this is actually working quite well, I think, because this is like a normal Steel Priest. It just doesn't have many of the components that you would normally have in Steel Priest, but it still works fairly well, I think. So you have the Blazing Battle Mage for a quick 1 mana 2/2. You also have the 1 mana 1/4 here. Draconic Studies to discover dragons. You would like to discover high cost minions from all of your discover cards. So the higher the cost, the better almost. We have the Homunculus, which will slow down the game for your opponent. Novice Engineer for the draw, of course. We have Penance. All of these remove cards here, because we need to remove if we are gonna succeed as a Steel Priest. We have the Fought Steel to copy cards from your opponent. We also have the Apotheosis, which is very, very important, because of course you can buff your minions, and then your minions also get lifesteal. This is a really good card in this deck. Same goes for Dragon Maw Overseer. This is a rare card, but we do use it because it's so good. At the end of your turn, give another friendly minion 2/2. You can see how that could easily spiral out of control. Bone Wraith we have. This is interesting, right? This is the only deck with a epic card. But Skeletal Dragon is such a value card that I thought it was worth to put it in. You could theoretically just exchange this for a big taunt minion, but this does so much more than just be a big taunt minion. As you can see, it adds a dragon to your hand at the end of every single turn so long as it's alive, which can spiral out of control. You can get a lot of dragons that you... a lot of cards that you do not own, you can still get through Skeletal Dragon while you play, meaning you could probably outvalue your opponent if you're playing on a low level, right? Because most likely they are not gonna have very many good cards either. So yeah, definitely something you should check out if you want to play Priest. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Alright, moving on to Mage. This will run you 880 dust, and I think this is actually pretty good. Right, this might work pretty well for you. So we have an Arcane Missiles. We have some side quests here. So you want to spend 8 mana on spells and you will get a 6/6 dragon directly on your board. We have the Wand Thief to try to steal cards that you don't have access to. The Ancient Mysteries to get our Flame Ward out, so you could easily do that. We have Sorcerer's Apprentice to, of course, make our cards cheaper. We have Firebrand, which works really well for removal. We have Imprisoned Observer, which will be very good because when it awakens, it deals 2 to your entire enemy's board. You might find that working pretty well for you. A Shore Explorer to discover dragons you don't have access to. We have Blizzard to freeze your opponent's board or potentially clear your opponent's board. And then we have a finisher, which is Deep Freeze, which will summon you 2 free 6s, probably giving you that late tempo you need to actually tie the bag. So this is an actually pretty good deck, I would say. You can easily get your value out of it. Again, I would say when you are discovering your dragons, you want to discover big dragons, right? Because big minions is something you need in this deck. Same goes for when you're discovering mage spells. Maybe discover high cost ones, right? Unless you desperately need one because you're after in tempo. Yeah, this is a pretty competent deck. I think I could see this one getting you all the way to maybe bronze 4, bronze 3, bronze 2, something like that. So yeah, definitely one I would check out for sure. There are better decks coming though, but this is a good one. Alright, moving on to Warlock. Now this will run you 860 dust, and this is also pretty good. So demonic studies we use to discover demons we do not have access to. So we want to discover big demons as usual. We have flame imps to get early board presence. Sinister deals, we want to discover lackeys, and when we discover lackeys, we really want to discover lackeys that discover more cards. So you want to discover a spell lackey or to discover a dragon lackey as your first picks, because those are very good for you here. We have Spirit Jailer, which will shuffle 2 soul fragments into your deck, which will heal you when you draw them. Voidwalker, we have Voodoo Doctor for that extra heal. Twisted Knowledge to try to get some cards that you don't have access to. Again, that's what we're doing with these budget decks. We're trying to discover non-budget cards. Drain Life, Shadow Bolt for remove. We have Hellfire for remove. Then we have Arnasi Broodmother, which will, when you draw it, will restore you 4 health, and then you could play it. Actually gonna work pretty well for you. We have Dread Infernal if you need a late, board clear, a late, effect like that. Siphon Soul for remove, and we also have Enhanced Dreadlord, which is a 5/7, which then turns into a 5/5 with lifesteal. So that will be a good finisher. You want to discover high cost cards on all your discover cards except for your lackeys, but even on your lackeys, when you discover more cards with your lackeys, you want them to be high cost as well, because that is going to be your finisher, which means this deck is a little bit variance. There's a lot of variance to it. Well, not a lot, but quite some variance to it, but I think you could make it work, maybe get up to bronze 5 or something. It's an interesting deck idea, and I think you could make it work. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Alright, moving on, we have Druid. Now this is a wannabe ramp Druid, which is hard, maybe a little bit hard for you to do a ramp Druid, but it will work with this deck if you do it properly, right? So what we want to do is, if we get a Lightning Bloom on our starting hand, we want to keep that. We don't want to mulligan that away. And then we want to get our overgrowth in as quickly as we can. We also have a wild growth, which will help with this growing. And then when you grow higher and higher and higher. You have a lot of high cost minions that will try to make you dominate the late game. Now this is hard without a survival of the fittest finisher, so it's not going to be as good as the constructed version of the ramp druid, of course, but this is still a workable ramp druid for only 1020 dust, so it could work for you all the way up to silver, I would say, this one, because it is not that bad. It actually has a lot of things going for it. If you could get that ramp in, you're just ahead of your opponent enough in order to finish him off with your big cards. Now this is a deck with a lot of variance, because of course you need to hit your overgrowths, you need to hit your wild growths in order to get up here. Right, Overflow is really good card. It will restore your entire hand. Emerald Explorer will allow you to discover more high cost cards. You have a lot of remove, Wrath and Bees. You have Mark of the Wild to make bigger threats. You have Crystal Power for remove. This deck is actually gonna work wonders, I think. This might take you all the way up to silver. If you want to build a budget druid, I think this one might actually work for you in the low levels of constructed play. Alright, moving on to Paladin. This is actually a deck that only costs 620 dust, but is actually still pretty good. What we're trying to do here is play value Paladin. So first day of school will give you a lot of 1-cost minions. You have Light's Justice if you need it. You have Argent Protector, which you should use on your other minions. You have Hand of Adal, which gives a minion 2+2+, draws you a card. Aldor Peacekeeper to remove their biggest of threats. You have Bronze Explorer, which you use to discover dragons. You want to discover dragons that you don't have access to. Bronze Herald will give you a lot of value, being a 3-mana 3/2, and then you have 2 4/4s also after that when it dies. And then you have Ancestral Guardian, which will do a lot of work to try to keep you alive. We have Blessings of Kings, which goes very well with, per example, Ancestral Guardians. We have Consecration, of course, to clear their board. Hammer of Wrath for a little bit more card draw. We have Truth Silver Champion to hit their minions. You have the Amber Watcher in case you're running really low on health. And same thing, we got Guardians of Kings, a great basic card which will also restore health to your hero. So what you're trying to do is slowly gain board control, slowly win over your opponent. You have so much restore, you can restore so much health that you should outlast your opponent pretty easily. It's 620 gold, dust, and I think you should easily be able to get up to at least bronze 5. It's a decent deck if you want to start playing Paladin. It's also a great introduction into how to play pure Paladin. Alright, time for Rogue. Now this is actually quite an aggressive Rogue. You are trying to kill your opponent very quickly with this one. So what you want to do is you want to get your various threats out. Of course, this would be a really good Spy Mistress into Ash Tongue Slayer turn 2. Will make 6 damage for face on turn 2. Which is really good. You have Eviscerate, which you can combo out. We have things like Shiv for card draw and Fan of Knives. You have Self-Sharpening Sword, which will give you more damage to face with the Deadly Poison combo. You have Vulpera Toxin Blade, which will also work really well with those things. And then we also have some things like Pharaoh's Cat, which will add a random reborn minion to your hand. And we have Wand Thief to get some extra spells. Now, this is a hard deck to pull off, and I do not see it being lethal every single turn. Making an ultra budget rogue is very, very hard, especially in the current meta, meaning that you should probably be careful using this one. I think this is the weakest deck out of the ones I'm showing you. So if you really want to play rogue, I guess you could try this, but if not, if you're just new and you don't know what you want to play yet, just don't play this deck. Choose one of the other decks, because the other ones are actually decks I could stand by. This one is a little bit harder to pull off, but should in theory be able to kill your opponent pretty quickly. Moving on to the best deck in this deck list, if you're talking about what you can do with it, I think you could reach high silver ranks in Constructed with this deck. You could probably even reach gold if you have a lot of patience, right? Because this will be very situational, because we're missing a lot of the key cards for Totem Shaman, but this is trying to be a Totem Shaman as good as we can, right? So turn 1 play, you could play Tour Guide into your hero power, and then turn 2 you want to get a totem down. Either Evil Totem or Trick Totem will be nice. Turn 3 you have your Totemic Reflection, which will give your totem +2/+2 and copy your totem. So you have 2 of them. And that will be really good with Evil Totem that is feeding us lackeys, but also with Trick Totem that is casting spells every turn. So this is a really good deck, right? We have Mana Tide Totem for the draw. We have Servant Sign Portal for getting some remove in. We have Senjin Shieldmaster for the mid-range and trying to protect your totems. We have Fire Elemental for the remove. We have Bloodlust, so that if you get like 5 totems out, you can just play your Bloodlust and double Totemic Surge. And well, there you go. You have, what would that be? That would be 4... You have 5 totems out, and that's 20 plus 15, that's 35 damage, you know? So this is a deck full of potential. You also have Lightning Bloom in order to build big decks on turn 1, turn 2. You can build really big decks, so that's why we use Lightning Bloom. This is actually a very competent deck. It might be hard to play at first, but what you want to know is that you want to use Totemic Reflection to copy your totems as much as you can, and then use Bloodlust as a finisher to smash his face. Now this should probably work for you pretty well, is what I'm guessing, especially in the very low ranks. Alright. Moving on, we have Warrior. Warrior is the cheapest deck I have for you. It only costs 600 dust, and it still works pretty well. You're trying to control the boards. We have Frightened Flunky. We want to discover, of course, big minions. We have Athletic Studies, which will discover rush minions. We're looking to try to discover legendaries in the first case scenario, but also trying to discover, you know, just big minions. We have Execute for the remove, of course. Information to try to add more cards that you don't have access to. We have Frothing Berserker, which is our biggest card in terms of dust cost, and this could spiral out of control if you have taunts behind it. We have Raid Leader for that little bit of extra damage, Shield Block for the card draw, we have Cocron Elite for the rushing towards face, we have Restless Mummy to clear the boards, Arcanite Reaper, pretty self-explanatory, and then we have Frost Wolf Warlord, because you're probably gonna have a lot of stuff on your board, so then this will be valuable. So this deck is probably gonna get you up to bronze 5, I would assume, if you have a lot of patience. It only costs 600 dust, so it's a very, very cheap deck. And many of the cards you will actually use in the bigger decks afterwards. So I would still consider, like, you could craft this with a good conscience, because that's pretty much the fact for all of these decks, though. You can craft them with a good conscience because you know that you will use the cards you craft for more advanced decks later. Alright, so last class, Ultra Budget Hunter. 720 dust to create this, and this is actually very good. We have a lot of full aggro cards here. This will work in the low ranks, but it will not work higher up, for sure. You could probably get to like bronze 4, bronze 3, bronze 2, something like that with this. Scavenging Hyena, we have just a lot of great value cards. You play this like a normal hunter. Of course, you have Primordial Explorer, you want to discover something big. We have Houndmaster, you know, just Thundra Rhino, a Savannah Highmane to try to finish. This is a really good list. I would just suggest you try to play it. We have Knife Juggler because we have things like Unleash the Hounds. We have like a lot of small minions we can play, so that is working here. We have 2 secrets, which will work fine for you as well. We can remove their weapons, which will be their like biggest way to remove our stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much all that there is to it. So yeah, that is Hunter. So I hope you enjoyed me going through some very, very budget decks, and I hope it will help you as a beginner player to get an understanding of the game. Like, these are not meant to be able to crush in Constructed. These are not meant to make you the best player at Hearthstone. These decks are meant for you to progress, to start understanding how to play Hearthstone. We have quite a lot of tricky decks to play. So the reason why I made a lot of these decks a little bit tricky is for you to understand their other deck types, because we have stuff like mid-range Hunter here, but a budget version. We have you know, Totemic Shaman, but a budget version. We have Ramp Druid, but a budget version. We have like Discover Mage, but a budget version. We're trying to do. What I'm trying to do is get you prepared to actually play real decks, like real meta decks, by giving you some budget alternatives to start. This will make you get a footing as you get into the game more, and then after a while, right, of practice, you will have a lot more fun using the constructed decks because you have tried it before with these budget decks. You know some of the compartments already, not making it everything at once overflow you. right? So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more Hearthstone tips videos, if you want to see more of these Hearthstone videos, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. If you could leave the video a like, that would help me out a lot, because then it gets recommended to more people, meaning more people will see this video. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, stay safe and goodbye.